reached around behind his head to untie the blindfold. The rag had been cinched so tight it looked painful, so Amy's fingers had to work carefully at the knot. She noticed that the German shepherd didn't even flinch when she finally slid the fabric off his face. This poor guy must have been through a lot. Once the blindfold was off, Amy could see the dog's eyes shining. To Amy, the dog looked scared, lost, and she wondered how he had gotten here. The muzzle was harder with how the tape was looped around it. Amy took the water bottle and dribbled water onto the dog's fur, trying to loosen the adhesive. Then her father brought out his Swiss Army knife and used the tiny scissors inside to cut the tape where it held the shepherd's mouth shut. Then they poured more water on the dog's nose and chin, and Amy pulled the last of the tape away. It was a traumatic process, she thought, but at least they'd gotten the dog free. As soon as they pulled the last of the tape off, the dog barked and licked Amy's face. She laughed with a bit of crying on the end, happy to have liberated the dog, but sad that anyone would leave such a sweet, handsome animal in this state. The shepherd pulled at his chain, licking Amy's hand and wagging his tail excitedly. Katie stepped toward him, and the minute she was in reach, the dog bathed the little girl's face in kisses, making her giggle and wrap her arms around his neck. "All right, well," said Dad, trying to look stern through his smile. "That was very sweet of you, Amy. But now that his face is free, we should call a shelter and leave him." "Dad!" cried Amy, climbing to her feet. She felt stung. How could he just leave this poor guy here? "We have to take him somewhere. He could die out here." "We can't just walk away with him, Amy. He's chained to that fence," said Dad. "Don't you have bolt cutters in your emergency kit?" Mom asked. Dad rolled his eyes. "Thanks, Patricia. You really backed me up here."
"I want to save the doggy," said Katie, scratching the shepherd's face. "Please, Daddy, please."
Amy folded her arms and stared at her father, waiting. Saying no to Amy was one thing, but once Katie got involved, he knew it was a losing battle. Dad stared back, flared his nostrils, and finally threw his arms up. "Fine. Give me a second." Amy knelt down beside the shepherd and scratched his neck. The dog panted and looked from Katie to Amy with his tongue lolling out, regarding them both. What a good dog, thought Amy. Strong, too, and brave. He hadn't even yelped when she'd pulled some of his fur out. That was strange. Maybe he'd had obedience training in his past, or had gotten tape on his face before. Or maybe he was just happy that someone like her had come along and saved him.
"Good boy, Rover,"
Katie said with a laugh. Amy scowled. Typical Katie, naming the dog before Amy even had a chance. "Oh," Amy said, trying to sound like she was joking, but letting her annoyance slip through. "The rest of us don't get any say in his name?" Katie looked perplexed, like she didn't know where the name had come from.
"I don't know,"
she said hesitantly.
"Don't you think he looks like a Rover? We should call him that. Isn't that right, Rover?"
Amy wanted to argue. Katie was the baby, so she always got her way, which really wasn't fair. But something about the name felt right to her. The shepherd looked noble, obedient, like man's best friend. A classic dog name suited him. "Good boy, Rover," said Amy. Rover barked and panted at her. If Amy hadn't known any better, she would have said the dog was smiling. Chapter 2. Rover. They pulled over at a rest stop a few miles down the road, a concrete turnaround with a gas station and a Dairy Queen separated by a huge parking lot and a bank of picnic tables. 5 or 6 other families sat eating ice cream and burgers. They all looked pretty tough to Amy, the fathers thick-set and covered with stubble, wearing sleeveless shirts that showed tattoos. The moms never smiling and snapping at their kids in sharp voices. One girl about Amy's age, thin and mean-eyed, glared at her as she passed. Without thinking, Amy put her iPad in the pocket on the back of Mom's seat. Mom felt the movement, glanced back, and gave her a sympathetic smile. "Nobody's going to bother you."